All right, I think we are live. Thank you all for joining. If anyone can give me an okay or yes, you can hear me and see me in the event page. I cannot hear anything. Okay, can anyone else hear me, see me? Yes or no? While we get things kicked off. Jeffrey says okay. Oceana says, Lance says perfecto. All right, Adeline, I would just check your speakers and stuff to make sure that everything's working. It looks like everyone else can hear me, so thank you. Thank you all. Okay, great. Fantastic. Well, all right, great. What's up, Max, Will, John, Katie, Jeffrey, Janine, Lance? All right, great. Thank you guys all for joining. We're going to kick things off here in just a couple minutes. Please introduce yourselves in the chat. We're going to give it a few more minutes here to let some other people come in and let more people join the event. If you guys want to introduce yourselves, share who you are, where you're from, what you're doing in the chat, that'd be great. We are going to be running some polls during the event. If you have questions for the speakers at any time, drop it in the chat. We'll be keeping track of them. I know Miriam's going to be out here in the chat. She was one of the organizers for the event. So she'll be keeping an eye on that. And we'll get to Q&A probably around like 7:40, 7:45-ish once the panel wraps up. If you guys haven't been to one of our events before or don't know who I am or what Entre is, my name's Michael. I'm the CEO and founder of Entre. We're a social network for entrepreneurs. Our goal is to help as many entrepreneurs as possible start their businesses, grow their businesses easier and faster. So our whole goal is really just being this place and this hub for entrepreneurs to, number one, come together, share ideas, share their thoughts, and just connect with other like-minded people. Everyone knows entrepreneurship is difficult. It's a crazy journey. And what we want to do is make it accessible, a little bit easier, a little bit less lonely than it has been in the past. And give everyone the ability to find like-minded people, find other entrepreneurs in their cities, industries, find developers, investors, mentors, advisors easier and faster. So we just rolled out our app. Right now, we're just giving early access to people within our network. I'm going to be dropping some links in here. You will need to click it on your phone. But if you just go to our website, joinentre.com, and sign up right there, you'll get on the list for early access. You'll get a link pretty much right after you sign up to get the app. And we're working on the web version, but right now it's just mobile. So you'll need to click the link and everything on your mobile device when you sign up. Besides that, I mean, we have an amazing event tonight. I mean, the speakers are awesome. I'm super pumped to learn more about this industry because I think it has capabilities to really change a lot of things that are going on in a lot of industries. So I'm super pumped about this. I'm going to start bringing up our speakers here in just a second. If anyone has anything, like I said, throughout the event, if you're just coming in, please introduce yourself, ask questions. We want this to be an interactive event. And then right after the panel's done and the Q&A, we are going to jump into networking. So you will have the opportunity to meet other attendees in the networking section. If you look on the left-hand side of your screen, you should see a networking button. That will go live right around 8 o'clock. And then you can jump in there and you'll be matched up one-on-one with another attendee, and you'll be able to do a FaceTime with them. So it's a cool feature, and we want to allow other people to meet each other. It's a huge part of what we're building here at Entre, and we hope that you guys enjoy this and come to future events that we have set up. We have a lot of cool stuff going on, a lot of cool speakers. Tomorrow night we have a VC interview with a partner at First Mark Capital. They're pretty well known, and the speaker's awesome. So without further ado, if we can have, I see John. I'm going to bring John up here. If Sean and Ben, if you guys can request to join here again. Hey, John, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going, Mike? Thanks for having
Going
me.
really well. Yeah, thanks for being a part of this, man. I'm super excited. There we go. Ben,
Yeah, same.
how are you? How's it going, Ben?
Hey,
Sean?
man. Good. How are you?
Awesome. We're chatting backstage, and I'm super thrilled for this. Trina is she had to switch up her mic and stuff, so she should be joining here shortly. But I'm going to pass it off to Sean right now, and let him moderate, let him do his thing. He's been in the cannabis industry for a while, so it's going to be great. He's going to be a great person to lead this panel. And then we'll kind of jump into everyone's backgrounds, and then as Trina comes on, she'll be able to share her background, and we'll jump into a bunch of. I mean, we were chatting backstage, and I'm pumped for this. Like, I'm super excited to see where the conversation goes. And without further ado, Sean, I'm gonna leave it to you. I'm gonna jump off here, and then I'll be in the comments. So if anyone, like I said, has questions, whatever, I'll be there to answer them, and keep track of questions, and we'll ask them at the end. So thanks, guys. Sean, over to you.
Thanks so much, Michael. And thank you to Entre, and thank you for having us and putting this together. Excited to talk about the future of the industry, an industry that in some ways it seems like we're just hitting kind of that startup stride, even though for decades cannabis has long been heralded as plant medicine in the future. So excited to get into the nitty-gritty of it and talk entrepreneurial outcomes in the cannabis industry. A little bit about myself. I will not talk about myself too much. I'm a content marketing director by trade. I've worked with some of the biggest brands in cannabis over the past 4 years specifically. High Times, Weedmaps, Green Entrepreneur, a few others. Have consulted with some MSOs, multi-state operators. I have to realize that we probably have some folks in here who this might be their indoctrination into the world of cannabis. I'll try to stop acronyming everyone to death. For the time being, I'm holed up in my apartment in Los Angeles because I think so much of us are quarantining. And I don't know, maybe one of the benefits about being on camera is being able to show off my tackle box of weed products. So this is filled with edibles and flour and tinctures and everything that gets me by. That's I don't have kids. That's my proudest crowning achievement, I suppose. Excited to be moderating this and kind of flowing it to the experts that we have on this panel. And without further ado, I'm going to throw it to first up on the panel. We've got John Shute. John Shute is the CEO and co-founder of PufCreativ, subject matter expert in marketing. John, I'd love to toss it to you, and if you give the folks at home a little bit about yourself, maybe talk a little bit about your origin story in the cannabis industry, how you got started, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. And again, it's a pleasure being on this panel with you and Ben. And I guess, my name's John Shute, CEO, co-founder of PufCreativ. We specialize in cannabis and hemp marketing. We're full service. So we're doing everything from branding, packaging design, website design, SEO, social media, all the above. Have a ton of strategic partnerships. We've been in business for about 4 years now. I've been in cannabis for about 5.5 years now, and I'm from New Jersey, so I grew up my entire life with, basically if you smoke weed, you're devil supporter or horrible person, and kind of always knew that wasn't the case, just because I noticed all kind of the positive benefits. I think for me in particular, I had like really bad attention deficit disorder, and that was unprescribed by pharmaceuticals. So I think weed kind of slowed things down for me and helped me a bit. I graduated college, and I was getting my master's degree in project management, and I initially got a job as the marketing and operations manager of a nightclub in South Florida, which is pretty interesting because it's not really my forte, but I kind of excelled because I just implemented a lot of creative marketing strategy and wasn't a part of that industry, so I was able to kind of bring this whole brand new perspective into it. And the nightclub was very successful while I was there, but I didn't really feel fulfilled. And around that same time, I had some friends from the Northeast struggling with opiates, and kind of did a lot of research into how cannabis can help folks with addiction and overcome addiction. And that's kind of like when I changed my life and get involved in the cannabis space. And I just immediately left my job managing this nightclub in South Florida. And I applied to a cannabis job. The first one I applied to, I got it. And it was a marketing director for like a content company in California. And we worked there for about 8 months, pretty much unpaid. And I was promised like a full-time salary and promised all these, health benefits and all this stuff. And about like a month before my wedding, they were like, psych, we're not going to pay you. We're not going to give you benefits. And you're on your own now. But that moment, I realized my value because I made them so much money in just 8 months of being there through just pure, organic, relentless, consistent marketing strategy. And that's how PufCreativ formed. I turned this really negative situation into this positive one based off my passion for the plant and passion for the industry. I even had an intern at the time who also quit her job for this job, got screwed over, and that is now my business partner. And and that's kind of how I got here today. And I forgot to mention too that I'm also the co-founder of this program called Cannabis Doing Good that started in year 2 of PufCreativ. And that program, I shared the link in the chats. We basically connect cannabis to community and build trust between the cannabis sector, our local communities, and businesses throughout the community. We've actually raised $70,000 the last 20 months for nonprofits all over the country, $10,000 just in this past month for homeless, hungry, and frontline workers here in Colorado. And, I'll touch on our efforts now towards the, social injustice efforts, but I think that might have been enough to kind of cover the background. Sorry if I babbled on there too much. No,
not at all. All good stuff. And we will touch on a lot of those same topics. I think a lot of folks in this virtual room will have similar experiences there. Thank you so much, John. Next up, hey, what's up? Next up, we're going to bring in Ben Futoriansky. We had a side bet. Ben, did I know your last name?
Yeah, no, all is good. I do hear an echo. Is that me? Oh, okay. Thanks, Sean, and again, really appreciate being here. And
sorry, Ben's an associate at Canopy Rivers, a subject matter expert in the financial services industry, media, and tech. There's no sorry, I'm a big Office fan. There's no rat-a-tat with these Zoom calls, but yes, without further ado, Ben, take it away, and feel free to give us kind of your background in the industry and how you kind of came to where you are today.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Sean. And first off, John, that's an incredibly inspiring story. I have a much less inspiring story on my pathway to cannabis. But essentially background is I currently work for Canopy Rivers, where I'm an investor there on the deal team. Canopy Rivers is a minority investing venture capital cannabis fund. So we were spun out of Canopy Growth a few years ago with the premise that we would take working with private early stage companies that span across the entire ecosystem, whether that was cultivation and retail manufacturing in the early days, all the way to technology, media, software, in addition to the consumer packaged goods, and really diversifying ourselves with life sciences and plant sciences and biotech going forward, which is really interesting, especially today. So myself, I spent the last few years working at Accenture, which is a management consulting firm doing primarily go-to-market strategies for Fortune 50 businesses. But while there, I actually had launched and scaled my own startup in the travel tech space. And that entrepreneurial bug really stayed with me. And something about being in the trenches and operating a company and learning how to fail and the successes that come with it that really stayed with me. So when I was reaching the end point of kind of my time at Accenture, I was really interested to bridge that gap and really be able to help entrepreneurs going forward. So I looked at the world of venture capital, and one of my mentors at the time, he had just moved from a technology venture capital firm to Canopy Rivers and wanted me to come with him. And I had no exposure prior to that to cannabis, wasn't really aware of the opportunity. But, when you buckle it down, you understand, how similar it is to traditional industries, whether that's CPG and consumer and wellness, or whether that's software and the tech enablement aspect that, really bridges the foundation of the industry. That really attracted me to where I am today, and really excited to be an investor with Canopy Rivers, where we get to really work on building out the next stage of cannabis companies for today and for the future.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Ben. That's great. Excited to chop it up and get into it. Our third participant, Trina Johnson, looks like there might be some technical difficulties, but we'll work through it and we'll kind of get her in stride to kind of keep things moving along. John, I kind of want to touch back with you and talk back more on kind of the marketing angle. I'm curious, just kind of a broad question. What are some of the challenges that you see in marketing your brand or cannabis brands in general these days, and how are you working to solve them?
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest hurdle that we have to cross as a marketing agency is there's a huge limitation on advertising. There's a huge limitation on the type of verbiage that you can use when marketing your product or brand in general. We have to basically formulate a customized solution for each client, depending on if they're a brand, a dispensary, an ancillary company, a service provider of some sort. And it's really interesting because not on top of having to navigate the boundaries of social media, which is a huge platform for cannabis brands, and Google and ranking on Google, we have to be careful of each state too, because each state has its own particular laws associated with the type of verbiage that you can put out there and the type of content that you can put out there. Just off the top of my head, let's bring up, and I'm looking at my deodorant here on my desk. So let's bring up a deodorant company. Typically a deodorant company, of course, has their foundational marketing aspects, but to get those conversions on those online sales and to create that brand awareness that any normal company would look for, they're running, social media advertisements that are targeted towards a particular demographic. They're doing pay-per-click campaigns on Google that are targeted toward a particular demographic. They're doing, geo-targeted, geo-fenced, advertising efforts, all of which you can't do currently in the cannabis community. Hemp, on the other hand, because it's federally legalized, and those platforms I mentioned, Facebook, Google, there is some tricks of the trade, and they're starting to let the floodgates open in regards to targeted advertising. But it's way more complicated than just putting up a normal product or having a normal storefront. You also can't, people love to use cannabis. As I mentioned earlier, I pretty sure I became so in love with it because it helped me focus, which is weird, because some people it doesn't. It reacts to everyone differently. So you can't make health claims when you're posting or it's informing people about this plant that helps so many people, and you also can't post, you can't put pricing up on your Facebook page and saying that you're offering these types of discounts. So every single way that you normally be able to attract someone in very easily is the complete opposite for the cannabis industry.
Yes, so, absolutely. Yeah, John, I completely empathize as somebody who's walked into these same bear traps over and over again. For the audience at home, to get even more specific on your point on social media, John, it's to the point where even, let's say, you launch your Instagram account for your brand, there are strong regulations for what you can even show in terms of somebody consuming a product. And the ban hammer comes down, and it's not equitable, it's not judicious in how it comes down. So there are so many tactics that will cause your account to get locked up, to get banned. There's so many pitfalls that it's almost easier to just be kind of consumption agnostic on some of your platforms when it seems so antithetical to promoting your business. Is that similar to your experience, John?
Yeah, totally. You have to be very creative, and that's, it's kind of like circling back to my first kind of, when I first spoke, you know, every single brand and every single business, I think, in the industry is so unique. And, you know, Ben was saying like, oh, my story's not as inspirational as yours, but that's not the case. You know, it's what's like so beautiful about cannabis is that every single person who consumes the plant or is in the industry or just uses cannabinoids in general has this different relationship with it, and it impacts them differently. So we truly try to find that particular reason and passion for each client, and that's actually how we conquer these battles. And of course, we're very, very grateful for organizations that you've been a part of, like Weedmaps and High Times, because they can kind of help leverage clients in particular situations through certain programs that are offered through there. But yeah, we really try to find like what distinguishes the client from all the rest of the businesses in this crazy space. And, you know, kind of touching back to my Cannabis Doing Good program, one critical reason and one critical point that we bring to clients is that giving back, being a member of the community, being environmentally savvy, practicing, you know, social justice and promoting these types of things is really what can help your brand and produce that content that resonates with the audience in the way that you really want it to.
One question, even just following up on to your point on social justice, the legal cannabis movement was born out of a social justice issue. The gay rights movement and the work of Perone and Brownie Mary, everybody that kind of came up through the ranks.
Yeah, and not to mention something else I realized. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to toss it to you of like, can you speak to with it being so intrinsically linked with cannabis companies, it's almost assumed that if you own a brand, you are supportive of social justice causes, and it's almost a matter of you're picking which ones to support, not a matter of if, as opposed to other industries, maybe tech that seems to be catching up and trying to play like the moral card. Cannabis comes through it altruistically. I was kind of wondering in terms of how important was it to you to infuse your business when you were starting your brand with kind of championing causes?
I think that was the most important thing. I think that like, and I think that that's the case for a lot of other organizations in the industry too. There's so much good that comes from this plant. It's absolutely blows my mind, the different facets and different channels that this plant can help people, from mentally health, help the community, how much money we've donated to the community. And yes, and it does you stem back to social injustice, which is crazy. So at a time like now, I almost feel that being part of the cannabis community, at least personally, I feel obligated to create a platform and make a difference right now. And I hope that everyone else in the cannabis community feels the same way. And if they don't, and if they're scared or they don't know what to do, people like me and people like my organization, Cannabis Doing Good, we're here to help. Any questions or any resources that anyone needs, we have that platform. And right now, as we speak, and this entire day, that's all I've been working on. I wanted to like come into this panel like not on fire and like not have a crazy work day, but I couldn't help it. I've basically, like, our strategy, we've directed all of our clients and all of our personal and the PufCreativ social media to our Cannabis Doing Good page. We are in communication with activists throughout the entire country who are advising us on the content that we're putting out and sharing onto our major social media platforms at the moment. So yeah, I hope that answers the question, but that's kind of the route that we're taking right now. And to piggyback on the social injustice and the past of cannabis and how cannabis prohibition even started. I mean, even just not even that long ago, the drug war is how our police were mobilized with all this crazy gear and all, so it's so deep. So anyone who is in the cannabis industry or not and needs a resource at this moment in time, I'm more than happy to be that resource. Or I did share the link to our Cannabis Doing Good program, so you guys can check out what we have going on. And we're going to have a whole entire, it's crazy. We actually just got approved for a nonprofit an hour ago. So we'll be setting up a social impact fund for social injustice over this next week that I will share with the folks at Entre, so everyone in this panel and all the attendees can get.
Congratulations, John. That's great news.
Thanks.
Digital class.
It's making moves right now. Yeah.
Awesome. We're gonna shift gears a little bit. Ben, we're gonna get back to you, but Trina, I want to make sure. Do we have a live connection? Trina, can you hear me live and clear? How are we doing?
Hey guys.
Hey, how's it going? So I'm going to introduce Trina. Trina is the CEO of Blue Forest Farms, based out of Colorado native. Trina, I tossed it to the fellows already, but I want to toss it to you. Can you share a little bit about yourself and maybe give the 2 to 3 minute origin story of kind of your relationship with the plant and how you've kind of come to where you are today?
Yeah, so I grew up in Boulder, Colorado. So just like a little bit more organic, and I go to the chiropractor instead of the MD, and I've always had a love for cannabis. And so when the industry started opening up, I didn't want to miss this. And then you start hearing about CBD and it just resonated with me. And at the same time, I met the largest certified organic farmer in Colorado, David Asbury, who was also for produce. And he was looking to get into hemp at the same time. So it was just a good collaboration, bringing two professionals to the industry, which, you know, it really needs. And he does all the farming, and my background is sales and marketing, and mainly digital marketing online. So it just has been a good collaboration, and the more and more you work with hemp and just see the power of it, like we really believe that it's going to change the world and change every industry. And when you work with hemp, it just like creates this momentum and powerful hustle and energy that everyone starts to feel. And so you just like we started dreaming of all the possibilities, you know, and knowing that we've barely touched on the surface to how the industry is growing in such a scientific way, and seeing more applications of the plant in different sectors is just so exciting for us. And we're really passionate about the propaganda and stigma around and just changing that. And you know, our culture, Blue Forest Farms culture, we're trying to create something about inclusivity and abundance, and we feel like it just matches the plant in general. And really, like, one of my co-founders is a minority, and just being as a woman, we are just, it's important to us, regardless of race and culture and background, and just to bring awareness and around privilege. And I mean, hemp has been a good platform for that. And
yeah, Trina, I'd love to keep it on that note of inclusivity. So speaking to how vital inclusivity is in this industry, especially when we're talking business partners, we're talking about every rung on the ladder having inclusivity. Can you speak to your assessment of what you and some of your contemporaries, just how the industry is doing in terms of a promise of inclusivity and a more diverse industry at launch?
well, you want me to go again?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm happy to, yeah. Well, I think when we look at some of the challenges and how we've gotten here today, and we look at the history of hemp and cannabis, I mean, it's dark. It's taken a lot of lives, and people are still sitting in, you know, behind bars, and people are risking lives to grow this plant and being persecuted unjustly, and mainly people of color. And so, you know, when you see the continued exasperation of like our internal framework and industries that are failing because we failed to build sustainable processes. And I mean, hemp is the answer, you know, it always has been. And so when we look at, you know, more recent at cannabis and specifically hemp, I just think that the industry really opened up and changed with the farm bills, right? And it just opened up in such ways of research and spreading education and just empowering the consumer base and motivate existing and new farmers in different ways. Because, it is just a new industry that creates opportunity, and it's about health and wellness. I mean, and that is inclusivity, in so many ways for everyone. I think giving's a big part. I heard all you guys, and I think just somehow the plant really makes you want to do that. And to us, it's important to get back to the community in different ways. And we give 10% of all our net profits. And so I think, anytime you make giving a priority, we believe like everyone wins. And,
cool. One other differentiator between you and the other folks on this panel, being a woman in cannabis, being a female entrepreneur. Could you maybe share some of your experience coming through the ranks into kind of where you are now? Can you give us kind of your spot assessment of how women entrepreneurs are treated in the industry, how you've been treated, and what your journey has been?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, gosh, being a woman in business, I mean, it's a big deal, right? And I know I face dynamics every day, and I love the way women have taken the business world and are just like pushing boundaries everywhere. And like for me, my passion is fashion and design. I love it. And so even like changing the conventional way that we view business attire and what is appropriate, and being able to build a company and culture that fashion is a part of expression, and you can be who you are, and have fun with that. But I mean, really, I think we should take a broader look at minorities in general and bring awareness and change some of the dynamics that most of us just aren't even aware of around privilege. And
Absolutely. You brought up a very interesting point about the alignment and kind of that Venn diagram of fashion industry and cannabis brands, wellness brands. Yeah. Can you speak more to that alignment and how that's worked in terms of positioning a product and marketing a product using kind of fashion aesthetics and kind of that model? Because I don't think that people would naturally arrive to that as kind of a consumer product, but it has worked for so many brands.
Oh, I agree. And, Blue Forest Farms is going to have their fashion line walk down New York Fashion Week for sure. It's a big passion of mine. And but I think that, the future of the industry is just everything hemp, not just, everything hemp. I mean, it's going to push every boundary, and hemp going mainstream for every industry. And I mean, we are going to wake up in our hemp houses, sleep in our hemp-filled pillows and bedding, and wrapped in our hemp blankets, and eat a hemp breakfast, and drive in our hemp-fueled cars, impacting batteries and fuels and potential of biofuels. And I mean, we want it to impact in every way. And I know what you're asking too, because I mean, this is when it will be tangible in communities, right? When like 5 to 10% of the people pick up hemp products, and it will get to a point where it's 10 million, 20 million, 30 million people, using a hemp product, and the effects that it will have on the community are just so massive. And part of it is that we are at a place now where some of this is so expensive, the whole industry, right? And while we get there, we need to all be okay to pay a little bit more for hemp products and move that along, and knowing as we build infrastructure, the cost will come down.
Oh, absolutely. If anybody in the chat has an idea for the hemp-based cereal that we are going to launch after the seminar, please drop that in the comments. Thank you so much, Trina. Ben, I wanted to circle back to you. Now, this is a Future of Cannabis panel, but it's also a time when I have you as a captive audience to ask you about how I should be investing or not investing in pot companies. So I'm actually curious, in your opinion, I think pot stocks are always a hot button topic. People are wondering about them and how sound they are. What makes a good, solid cannabis company investment, or a cannabis company to invest in? What are the key characteristics that you look for?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to start with, it's very difficult to even answer that question in today's market, because we haven't been around long enough to really establish the rights versus the wrongs in a company. I mean, what we always value whenever we're looking at any investment is a few different pieces of criteria, and it always depends on the sector and depends on the stage. I think first and foremost, it's always the team behind the company. Do they have a deep experience and a track record of a passion in that industry? What are they actually trying to prove, and what is the mission of the company in terms of what are they trying to achieve? Is it, another piece that, will just blend into the shelf, or will there be an identity and an awareness component and actual quality aspect? Moving forward, it's always important to understand, how are they growing and over what period? Are they showing signs of traction? Are they improving their unit economics in terms of scaling much more quickly and much more efficient? And those factors all come together to really understand how this cannabis investment comes to play. I mean, when we look at the different sides, you have, something that I look at is CPG and software. And if we're talking about CPG, where I know, Trina has a lot of experience here, there's two aspects that we consider, and John as well. And I think there's two aspects here that we consider. It's one is, how are they acquiring the users? And I think a lot of that stems from differentiation. And I take it back to the obsessive approach of a customer, and what are they doing to really refine that customer feedback loop to drive new purchases. One of our portfolio companies is called Headset. They provide retail intelligence on the different SKU data within dispensaries. What we see is that the top 5%, the top 5 brands in any category command over 50% of the market share within that respective category. Now, when you look at the rest of the brands, it's fragmented. It changes every single week. And the one thing we're noticing is, why isn't there consistency in the top 10 rankings, the top 15? And that's because there's a lack of loyalty and there's a lack of retention. I think that John was talking about this earlier with, how do you market to a company, to a consumer? How do you target them afterwards? So I think, going down this route, these are all important factors to consider when we're looking at an investment in that CPG side. One thing to note is the quality as well. I mean, with cannabis and hemp particularly, some people are concerned about the quality. And I think Trina could talk to this a bit more, but the lab testing environment, the certificate of analysis that needs to be completed. Leafly, one of the technology companies, they put out a survey where they surveyed 47 different CBD products. Of those 47 products, only half of them came in the realm of the required and estimated actual efficacy of what the dosage stated. The other half came between 0 to 150% in standard deviation. So do we really know as consumers what we're purchasing? And how could I as a consumer be confident that I'm purchasing the right product? Well, that's a lot on education as well. So all these factors combine together when we look at an investment and when we go deeper to understand what the company is really embodying.
Yeah. So one common refrain I hear with cannabis investments is to be leery of maybe folks that are reinventing the wheel and just kind of slapping the cannabis layer on there. Can you speak to maybe the having to be conscientious of that knowing that this one girder of federal prohibition is there that keeps kind of the Googles of the world or some of the big players of the world from making that jump over to cannabis, but not to be looking for folks that are cloning and reinventing the wheel, already kind of copying and grabbing ideas from other companies. Can you speak to maybe that balance or that apprehension of when you're looking to make a long-term investment for the life cycle of a company?
Yeah, so when we're looking at the companies that we see, I think one thing you mentioned just now is, what is cannabis being actually used for? Is it being used as the product, like you are taking the cannabis, or is it used as an ingredient for a certain threshold, certain effectiveness? And I think companies that are, just kind of blending in or using as a product, companies that are actually, creating something new, providing something different, is actually using it as an ingredient. So there's examples of brands that are hyper-focused on one certain criteria. There's a brand called Dreamt, which is a vape, which actually is hyper-focused on providing melatonin aspects when you're going to sleep. And it's for that one specific use case of going to sleep. There's other certain brands that really have that hyper-focused niche of different types of aspects as well. And I think, it's interesting to see that. I think if you look at 2 years ago, the only way or the only kind of opportunity that existing entrepreneurs saw was to go public. That's how an exit would have formed. You would sell yourself to a larger licensed producer. I think today there's a realm of new opportunity with the larger players, with CPG coming into play, with big tobacco, whether it's Imperial and Ultra, whether it's cosmetics companies like Sephora and Estee Lauder. looking at the hemp program, understanding what kind of efficacy could be used for that. And I think that opens up a realm of new opportunity. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity in the next 2 to 3 years to really create the product that would be used as an ingredient for specific use case to drive awareness and identity. And that's something that's going to last for the long term and not just the short term, what we're seeing today in the market.
Perfect. For folks who might be new to cannabis investments, I think they might hear a term like green rush. Like, are we in the middle of the green rush? Could you maybe scope out and kind of talk about the history of the industry from maybe that initial green rush where it was almost seemed like the industry was printing money to maybe what era are we in now in terms of kind of being scrupulous and having to have more concrete financials? Can you maybe break it down into eras or talk about the progression from kind of green rush times till now?
Yeah, this is something we love speaking about as an industry and also as a firm, because we look at 2017, 2018, companies were being funded off of an idea, and they were being funded to tens of millions of dollars that they purchased land that in 3 years they would have a license because they knew a guy that lived in the land area, and that guy had a connection to a politician, and everything was going to be good in 3 years. Tens of millions of dollars were being funded and floated into these business plans, we call them. The next stage of that cycle happened around 2018 to 2019, where if you talked about international expansion, if you talked about CBD, if you talked about Germany, and if you talked about many different kind of categories that were exciting to shareholders, tens of millions of dollars would also appear in your bank account because you have a business plan, you're recruiting Coca-Cola executives, you're recruiting different types of big name traditional company executives, and that would be enough to float a lot of capital into your business. I think where we saw that split of a more mature industry forming was the summer of 2019 that just passed, where the question was no longer, corporate governance was being issued to many of these public companies, whereby they had to adhere and they had to report on all of these earnings that they once had predicted. And many companies were missing earnings. A few companies were conducting malpractice. Some companies, they just couldn't survive anymore. And that was all based on predicted revenues from 3 years ago. So we almost saw the crash of cannabis at that point for certain large licensed producers. There was a huge scare that happened with the vape crisis, and that put a lot of companies out of business, and that was due to the illicit market. So cannabis has been experiencing a correction on its own, and I think the path towards profitability towards companies that actually are generating very impressive and healthy margins. I think the word gross margins has been highly missing in this industry of, we're building businesses here. We're not building ideas. And for a business to sustain over the long run, it has to have the fundamentals down pat. So today, when we're looking at companies, it's not just based on an idea. It's not based on the executive team. It's a mixture of all of these factors put together and showing an actual proof of concept whereby you're assessing these downside scenarios, because anything can happen. We're so immune. We were so immune to a recession happening with COVID. We're so immune to the civil unrest that's currently going on in the industry. We're so immune to potentially dispensaries being looted or not being able to physically walk into a retail store. None of this was accounted before in the predictions that was stated by various companies. And I think just planning for a potential downside is something that's crucial today, and that's something that we require from the companies we speak with.
Absolutely. If times have taught us anything, it's to predict the unpredictable, of course. You bring up a very interesting point, Ben, the vape crisis. And with everything going on in the world, it's almost crazy to think that it started about fall of last year. We're about 6 months out from those initial reportings of death from illicit market vaporizers. John and Trina, I'm actually curious to get your take on maybe how heavy was the touch point when that crisis messaging started up, and how did you respond marketing wise? And how have you kind of worked? I'm assuming you guys aren't running illicit businesses, but everybody's kind of had to up their game in terms of purity of product, in terms of kind of coming forth with lab testing and kind of showing exactly what how the sausage is made, so to speak. So can you maybe speak to maybe how that vape crisis initially hit you and how you've kind of come to kind of own it, and kind of how it's impacted your business?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the only way we were directly affected was due to just having 2 clients who offered vape products, which weren't their only products. But well, fortunately for us, we do a lot of vetting before we onboard a client. So a client, we need to build trust with them just as they do with a consumer or any type of B2B business they're doing. So we actually take a look at all of our clients' lab tests before we even get involved with them. So fortunately for us, our vape clients were not lying. They were, not using, vitamin E acetate, that was purchased through some crappy terpene company. That being said, there's been so much research that I've looked into about this, and I even read an article that there is vitamin E acetate produced in cannabis and hemp at a very, very minimal level. So anyway, we adjusted by communicating with our clients who were in this industry to be more vocal about their lab testing, and each of them produced a statement to their consumers to establish that trust a bit more. And we actually, surprisingly enough, we were planning to get a lot of, when you put yourself out there on social media, you can get a lot of negative feedback or pushback on statements like that. But we actually did, which made us feel really good because it just made us realize that our clients really are trusted and their consumers really trust the product. I do know that wasn't the case for every other company out there, especially the ones who their brands were directly in articles and stuff like that. That being said, the industry is still, as much as it's moved forward, this is just a pure example of how we're still in such the beginning phases of it, because things like that just, in my opinion, shouldn't happen. We're in this to help people, and we're in this to provide a medicine that has been around for centuries. The last thing we should be doing for people who are using this for their sleep, to help with chemotherapy, to help with stress, to help with anything, is hurting their we should be hyper focused on trying to benefit them.
Absolutely. Thanks, John. Trina, same question to you. How have you come on the other side of the vape crisis? Trina, you there?
I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I was sorry.
No worries.
So we don't have vapes. That wasn't in our retail line. My partner, Zach Dorset, our chief growth officer, we spent a lot of time producing a really gorgeous and effective oil and retail product line, and taking all the measures. And because we believe that science is the way to push the industry and opening that in that way. And so, one of our main focuses and challenges has been seeds and genetics, because really that's where it starts for everything. And so we're taking a scientific approach. We have our PhD plant geneticist, and this work just feels so powerful, designing a program that is going to offer bigger yields, consistency in any climate and region, and just huge for scaling a business and the industry in general. And so we just are trying to really, that's the way we think, being informative and scientific, and really being in that community and pushing it that way.
Terrific. Guys, we got a few questions from the audience that I wanted to at least pepper in here. Feel free, anybody who wants to field this, speak up on it. So we have our question. Do you think the pandemic will be a motivator for the government to finally make cannabis federally legal to help the economy with new jobs and with a new source of tax revenue? Yeah, so the question, they've deemed our companies essential businesses. Do we think that they'll walk the talk?
Yeah, I totally think so. I think this is an eye-opener for not only politicians at the state and federal level, but I think it's an eye-opener for already cannabis users and also people who don't consume the plant. Again, I'm from New Jersey, so immediately when cannabis was deemed essential, I had friends and family members like, "Oh my God, this is great for you," blah blah. And I was like, yeah, I mean, this is great, but I mean, this is, we're still going to be, even after COVID, it's still going to be a fight, and there's still so much education and so much more that needs to be involved in the industry. We actually do marketing for another program called the National Association of Cannabis Businesses. And they've been sending letters to politicians all over the country, mainly governors at the state level, and also the White House too. I'm sorry, disregard that, but they're sending them to the White House and governors at the state level. And I think we just posted the other day about 4 of the states that they sent to. I want to say Pennsylvania, or not Pennsylvania, New York, Minnesota, and 2 others just recently announced during COVID, in the heart of COVID, that they will be legalizing cannabis now. And I think that is going to create a ton of new job opportunities for folks, and also a source of tax revenue for the state level. I'm assuming if the federal government does decide to get their hands involved, which, it's coming one day, I'm assuming that that's going to create, obviously, more and more jobs and more tax revenue as well. For me, it's interesting to see how this unfolds. If the power relies state to state, that's going to be a very interesting situation for folks. If the power then switches to federal and the state borders are now open for trade and all that, that's going to be another very, very interesting model that we're all going to be experiencing. So,
yeah, for Ben or Trina, if you care to answer any kind of pandemic, whether that'll be a motivator for federal legalization. I also have a pair of hemp-related questions that might be a fit for either of y'all's forte. So the questions about hemp are: what are some options to securing funding to cultivate hemp? And also, I've been struggling to find financial assistance in upgrading my hemp grow. Would love some knowledge on that as well. So feel free to choose your own adventure with either the federal legalization question or hemp, getting this guy some help.
I could jump in for the financing, and then Trina could jump in as well. I mean, for financing, there's a few different ways. I mean, first and foremost, I think every option is on the table, whether that's going towards friends and family that would want to support you in the journey. I think that's always option number one. For an investor to come in at the later stage, it's always interesting to see skin in the game, whether the founders have also put in any capital, and also have friends and family supporting. That's kind of step one for viability and kind of, checking the box. I think, down the line, it really depends kind of what you're looking to offer in terms of equity, or kind of how many people you have on the team. I think there's options from equity, from venture capital. There's also debt options that would probably be able to pay back over a longer period of time. So there's various options. There's various firms that specialize in hemp farming and debt. There's various VCs that specialize in hemp facilities as well. So really it's just picking your poison, doing the research, reaching out and understanding, is there a fit with this business and this financial operating group and my business. I'm not sure if Trina, if you want to add anything on that.
Well, I think on the, we've been applying for all those loans and assistance, and grateful that we have the means and resources to do that, because not everyone does. But they just opened up 2 big applications that hemp didn't qualify for before. So just knowing about that, because they came online later. And then we develop a program right after this that we are trying to finance some seed purchases. We want to really support the farmer and the grow still this year. And so we have that program going, and hopefully it feels really supportive. And because it is hard to get financing in hemp. It's always that extra push to be equal, right?
Yeah, Trina, do you have any tips or advice for folks in terms of getting financing? Maybe things that aren't surface level, easily accessed. Anything that you've learned?
Well, our finance, cut it up if you're growing seeds. That's an easy one, and an easy cut it up. But it is hard. It is a push. It is. We've had a hard time doing it too. So we focus on sales and driving our sales.
There we go. And we persevere even in the face of everything happening right now. Guys, that's going to do it for our panel here. Again, I want to thank John, Ben, and Trina. Thank you so much for your time and expertise and empathy and care in sharing that with us over the past hour. Without further ado, I'm going to throw it back to Michael from Entre. If you want to say anything to kind of take us out, Michael, I know that there's kind of a happy hour thing going on. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks guys so much. That was awesome. I mean, I learned a bunch. I hope everyone else did. I mean, one of the reasons why we want to do this is just because we believe, you know, in this industry itself, you know, not just like, you know, the plant, but the impact that it can have on all the other industries itself too. So thank you guys so much for your time and being a part of this. You know, this was amazing. We are going to be switching to networking. So if you guys are just coming on or came on late, there's going to be a networking button on the left-hand side of your screen. That's going to start at 8 o'clock. So we have a couple more minutes, but you know, I want to just like thank all of it looks like everyone's thanking everyone in the chat. So you guys rocked it tonight. That was amazing. If there's any last minute things, or what are the best places for people to find you guys, or if they want to learn more, if they want to connect with you, should they hit you up on Twitter, LinkedIn, email? What's best? If you guys want to drop some of that in the chat to connect with people afterwards, that would be great. And, you know, besides that, like, I enjoyed this. Hopefully we can do one of these in person at some point in time. Maybe, you know, who knows where, you know, we could maybe go out to Colorado to meet up with Trina, or LA with Sean. You know, there's a lot of different cool spots to do it. So hopefully we'll get to do one of these in person, obviously in a state that is legal, so that we can, you know, maybe even figure out a way to do it outside or something like that as well. But, you know, this was awesome. You know, thank you guys again so much. If anyone wants to, you know, do any closing remarks or say any final thoughts, or where people can find you, that'd be great.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks everyone for tuning in. It's seriously been a pleasure to like be on this panel with everyone on the panel and everyone who's like at home viewing right now. I think that these types of panels are what really help progress the industry forward in a positive direction. And again, if anyone wants to get involved or needs advice on how to properly get involved with what's going on in the, you know, the social injustice taking place in our country, hop on board our Cannabis Doing Good train. Reach out to me personally. I'm more than happy to be a resource for everyone.
Yeah, that's awesome, John. We appreciate that. We're working on putting together like a startup pitch competition, or some type of a giveaway for like Black-led startups and stuff like that too. But yeah, I mean, you know, this is, you know, one of the reasons why we want to keep doing these events, even though we can't do them in person, is just bring people together, right? Just share ideas, share thoughts, especially the entrepreneur community, because we're the problem solvers, right? And we're needed now more than ever. So, you know, thank you guys for being a part of this. I hope everyone has a great rest of the week, great June. Hopefully June, things start turning around here, and we start moving forward. But yeah, thank you guys so much. And like I said, if you jump over to the networking section, that should be kicking off here shortly, and you can meet some other people in the cannabis industry. So thank you guys so much. I'm gonna drop out of here, and you know, we'll move on to the networking. So thank you guys so much. It was great connecting.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks guys.